They're not natural.
I got to tell you,
he stays in the handshakes now.
Well, I almost shook his hand, but then I knew I was going to do it when the show started. I didn't want to do two handshakes.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm still buzzing from the 78 points Boston put up.
Oh, yeah.
The
old Mannix curse.
That was awesome.
Man, Mannix, I think, has a side deal.
Year, right?
That was awesome.
You got a side deal with Hotels.com? Just getting people to book finals tickets in different cities.
I can move the needle a little bit.
There you go. I like it.
That's great. All right, let's talk about that a little bit. But after missing all but 9 games this season and with only 3 games left to play, there's still plenty of time for Kawhi to return to the lineup, said nobody ever. You know the story. Medically cleared, yes. Played since January, no. He's drawn criticism from his coach and multiple veteran players. But according to Spurs guard Danny Green, who joined Chris Broussard on his podcast, the team has no issue with Kawhi.
The only person that really knows is Kawhi Leonard. I guess he had a setback. He had a couple of setbacks, and then he was still in pain. We had communication. We sat down. Some of us talked to him individually. We texted him. And he's still very much a part of our team. So you're in touch with him? We're all in touch with him. We all text him. We're all in touch with him. He's still very much a part of our group and our team. We still have his back, whatever his decision is, what he's doing. From our team and from their perspective and standpoint, I can speak for most of them. There is no odds. You know, we're not at odds with him.
So many different reports about so many different things and how both sides are really approaching this. Do you buy that the Spurs can still work it out with Kawhi Leonard at this point with the regular season all but done?
Oh, look, that's relevant commentary from Danny Green, because one thing I hear from other players who are not associated with the Spurs is they wonder if inside that locker room the Spurs feel like Kawhi quit on him. Like, you know, they're in a playoff push right now, and Kawhi's not willing to push through it on the court. They don't know, but that's the question that they ask. Now, is it reconcilable? Let's say this first. I've seen worse. LeBron James and ownership in Cleveland reconciled after a bitter breakup years ago. I've seen worse. That being said, other teams right now, you saw Brian Windhorst last week reported that teams were kind of preparing offers. I've talked to multiple teams that are doing that exact same thing. And right now, teams are kind of using their relationships they have with people inside the Spurs organization to kind of probe a little bit, to ask, is this real? Are you going to put him on the block? Now, nothing definitive has come out of this yet, so it makes you think that maybe there is a sense in the Spurs organization that they're going to try to make something work. But the clock is ticking on this. The best chance for San Antonio to make a deal that gets them something real back in return is going to be this offseason. So if this thing is going to come to a head, it's going to happen July, August.
Right. I mean, that's a critical point because Kawhi has a player option after this year. Like if you trade for him mid-season, next year, if they try to make it work, it doesn't work, they trade for him mid-season, you're getting him for 30 games and the playoffs, and then he can go anywhere, right? So that is why if it were to happen, it would happen this offseason. The reason that I think that Kawhi has played his last game as a Spur and that it's not reconcilable is very simple. What did Greg Popovich say to LaMarcus Aldridge? What he said to him was, when LaMarcus Aldridge wanted a trade, he said very simply, all right, find me what did he say? Go get me Anthony Davis?
Yeah.
It was essentially, find me a player better than you, find me good equal value, and I'll trade you. There wasn't value for LaMarcus Aldridge at the time. He was coming off a bad season. People didn't see this year coming from him. You weren't going to get equal value. You can get, Kawhi would be the best player available via trade since when? Since, I mean, better player than Harden at what we thought of Harden at the time, like when Dwight Howard was at his peak and it seemed like he was available via trade. Like, you will have teams essentially say, listen, here's the roster, here's our future picks. You build the package and we'll see if we can make it work. So the Spurs would be able to get, you never get full equal value for a superstar, but they would be able to get as close to it as you can come. And that's why I think it is that it won't be reconciled, because the Spurs don't have to reconcile it. They recognize and they know, man, if we just are stubborn and just stand pat, then he can walk in a year. Mm-hmm. Now he'd be forfeiting some money, a lot of money, because the Spurs can offer him that supermax extension. But Kawhi has the leverage in this situation, and from everything I'm hearing and everything I'm seeing, he doesn't seem to want to be in San Antonio after this year.
No, I thought a couple of things that Danny Green said in the podcast there with Chris Broussard was, one thing he said was, most of the players, he said most of them, he didn't say all the players, he said most of the players are comfortable with Kawhi and what he's gone through. And the other thing that I thought he said was really important was Kawhi had a couple setbacks. Now, we haven't heard that. But, I mean, I know that because I know the people who handle Kawhi. So I'd be shocked if he played in San Antonio. Kawhi don't want to be in San Antonio anymore. And all the murmur and stuff that came out of the locker room, it's not helping their situation. So when you have a player, Aldridge, he didn't have the ability to be able to go out, and on the market at that point, he wasn't that valuable. For right now, for Kawhi though, Kawhi is valuable. And I know that there are other players in the league that are intrigued about, wow, Kawhi would go somewhere, what that domino piece, how it would affect the rest. I believe it would affect LeBron. I believe LeBron going to Los Angeles, him and Kawhi potentially being in Los Angeles is a real possibility. And if LeBron decided he want to take less money, LeBron, Kawhi, and Paul George playing with the Lakers. Now, that's what I believe he's going to leave San Antonio, and I believe that the Lakers are a potential destination for him.
Chris Mannix, why do you think it is that Kawhi Leonard doesn't want to be in San Antonio anymore? It can't just be the way the team handled his quad injury. Is there more to it? What are we missing?
There could be more to it. He's a very difficult nut to crack. Like he's not a very outspoken guy. He has a very tight inner circle. I'd almost compare him in some ways to Russell Westbrook in that regard. So you don't know. What you do know is that the handling of this injury issue has been a significant deal. It's been a far bigger one than I believe that most people around the league believe coming in. Look, as recently as 2 weeks ago, it was coming out of the San Antonio organization. He was going to suit up and play in that New Orleans game on a Thursday night. Now, he's gone. He's back in New York, or at least he was a couple of days ago, getting another opinion on that injured leg. So I think that's a big issue. And like we've talked about, the clock is real here. The opportunity to deal a player. And let's be honest, Kawhi Leonard went healthy. And I think people sometimes have forgotten over the last year.
He was top three MVP.
He's a top 5 player in the NBA.
Yes.
That's a top 5 player just hitting the prime of his career that you can deal. So if you can get, you bring up the Lakers, but if you can get Boston to deal Jason Tatum and a pick, that's a real asset. And I mean a top 10 pick, respectively, for Kawhi Leonard.
Well, the thing about the pick is interesting because what people have to recognize is we have seen this amazing player development from San Antonio. But the last blue chipper they got was Tim Duncan. That's what happens when you win 50 straight games for 18 years. That's what happens when you make the playoffs for 20 straight years. Since Pop's been there, they've had 2 blue chippers, guys that we thought as blue chippers coming out of college. David Robinson, who obviously was there before Popovich was there, but Popovich helped develop him, and Tim Duncan. Both of those players reached 100% of their potential. You then have Kawhi Leonard, who coming out of San Diego State was not considered a blue chipper. The development helped turn him into it, and people had misgraded him in the draft. What would the Spurs do with Jason Tatum? What would they do with a guy that was considered a blue chipper, has proven to be that, and then an additional first-round pick? What would they get? What would we think of Brandon Ingram, who right now people are like, I get the scoring, I see it, but like what we've seen the Spurs turn the last pick of the draft, Manu Ginobili, into a potential Hall of Famer. Tony Parker, I think, was 29th pick of the draft, in full potential. DeJounte Murray, they get the most out of every player that gets there. So the idea of getting a blue chip prospect, which they haven't had in 20 years, has to be attractive.
And let's be clear, too. I mean, look, San Antonio's first preference here, from everything I'm hearing, is to find a way to make this work. There's skepticism that they can actually do it, but that's their first preference here. If that can't be done, though, this is almost an opportunity to kind of put some punctuation on the last 20 years. We've been wondering, when is the Spurs dynasty kind of going to end? Manu Ginobili might be gone end of the year. Tony Parker, who knows? This is their chance to kind of reboot the whole thing. I believe, last night's 8-point clunker notwithstanding, that Jason Tatum is a franchise player. You can build around him. You give the San Antonio Spurs, R.C. Buford, that staff, a top 10 pick, you could have 2 franchise players within 12 months to build around for the future. So I think you kind of have to look at that if you're San Antonio as an opportunity to reboot the whole thing.
All right, Cece, you had brought up LeBron. We're going to talk about where LeBron might end up. Chris, stick around. That and more.
Boston.
Next.
Take LeBron to Boston. Let's just do that.